Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to episode number 14, this edition of Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and this podcast brought to you by the Keep Pounding Podcast Network on Twitter at KP_FSSN. And also this podcast powered by the Fans First Sports Network. Follow them on Twitter at FansFirstSN. And you can also rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to the Tobacco Road Sports Radio YouTube channel at youtube.com/@Tobacco Radio. Well, my latest guest here on Inside the Vault, he is an editor for CatCrave.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Dean Jones. Dean, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Inside the Vault.
Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
You too. Let's just go ahead and start with the upcoming game against Miami this weekend. 0-5 start for the Panthers, but we'll get to the Miami part in a little. What are your thoughts and takeaways just from this season so far? I feel like a lot of Panther fans, they maybe didn't see 0-5 coming. Maybe 2-3, 2-4 to start, but I don't think anyone saw 0-5 coming in. If you talk to some people, 0-6 game shouldn't even be played. We're just going to get boat raced. Not saying I disagree, but we'll see on Sunday. So overall thoughts and takeaways so far just from your start to the season.
Oh, where to start? I mean, it's been a mess, really. Yeah. Nothing more you can say about it. To be honest, I don't think it would have been as bad from a fan perspective if they just said, it's going to take time. We're rebuilding. We've got a young quarterback who's going to take time to learn the ropes. He's going to make mistakes. But the fact they came out and said, we're dropping in a quarterback and taking off, this roster is ready to contend for the NFC South, to make the playoffs. And to go from that to this in five to 6 weeks is disgraceful, really, and kind of an indictment on the current ethos, I want to say, within the building. I mean, whether it's the owner, whether it's the front office, whether it's too many cooks on the coaching staff in terms of you pay all this money for guys, but they all want their voice heard and they all want their ideas implemented, and finding that balance is taking longer than expected. I don't know, but I mean, I don't think even sort of the brightest or most doom and gloom merchant would have expected this start, really. And I mean, the chances are it's only going to get worse this weekend. So there's some real soul searching needed kind of during the bye week.
Yeah. They do play Miami this weekend. As I said earlier, we'll get to that game a little bit, but I want to go into some of the position groups that we have been kind of in the media recently into the talk. Chuba and Laviska Shenault, looks like it might be them this weekend. Miles Sanders out with a shoulder injury sustained in that last week's loss to the Lions. Did not practice Wednesday, did not practice Thursday. Should Miles Sanders be on the bench at this point anyway? It just seems like, Chuba's averaging more yards a carry. Laviska Shenault, Frank Reich talked about this on the preseason, that Laviska was going to get backfield usage, but we hadn't seen that really up until last week. So what are your thoughts on the backfield rotation? And then we've got the forgotten guy, Raheem Blackshear. He's been on the sidelines all 5 games, and it's like he's a ghost. So talk to me about the backfield rotation and what you would like to see this weekend.
Yeah, there's something clearly amiss with Miles Sanders. He's just lacking that explosiveness you saw last year. Obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles' offensive line is a lot better, and they have got a genuine mobile dual threat quarterback in Jalen Hurts as well that opposing defenses needed to account for. But I know he was dealing with a groin issue as well before the shoulder thing came up. So maybe he's just a bit banged up, but there's definitely something missing. I mean, even in terms of his on-field vision, it leaves a lot to be desired. And obviously, he's not the sort of back that can kind of go in between the tackles and create those yards like Dante Foreman did last year, like Chuba Hubbard is starting to do. So if it means resting him this weekend, letting him heal up, giving him the bye week as well, so then that gives him kind of a good period of time to get right, and then hopefully we'll see a better sort of Miles Sanders after the bye week, because those three games after the bye are kind of pivotal to Carolina's chances of kind of salvaging anything from the season, really. So if they can get him 100% for them, it'll be a big bonus. But if he can't go, then I think kind of a 1-2 combo with Chuba and LaVisca would be ideal. I mean, they complement each other quite well, especially Chenault. I mean, I've been really impressed with his on-field kind of awareness of finding gaps and exploiting them during his limited carries. He's got the physique to churn yards out. I mean, that was his MO really ever since college, is creating those yards after the catch and taking them for big gains. We've seen flashes of it in Carolina since the trade, but that kind of would be the best avenue to go for me. Just kind of a 1-2 punch. That was so successful last year with kind of Foreman and Hubbard once they got going after CMC was traded.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the running backs being blocked by the offensive line guys, I thought had a really decent game this past week, despite that Hutchinson interception on the Ian Thomas screen. We won't get into that because that's just too depressing. But Icky, I thought, had his best game of the season this past week against the Lions and that ferocious pass rush that they have. Icky was going through a sophomore slump, it seemed like, in the preseason and in the first few games of the year. But I feel like the offensive line had turned around nicely this past week. Just thoughts really quickly on the offensive line going into this matchup and just the game they had last week despite the loss.
Yeah, I think schematically, I think the best thing for Bryce and the offense to do this weekend is kind of get the football out quickly. Miami's pass rush is quite good. Obviously, they've got the two bookends, Moton and Ekwonu. I completely agree with you. I thought that was Icky's best game last week of the season by far. I've actually been quite impressed with Calvin Throckmorton on the interior as well, to be honest, over the last few games. Considering he was a late arrival, didn't really have much time to sort of bed in before getting thrown into the fire thanks to injuries. So it's really positive for him. I kind of want to see a little bit more from Bradley Bozeman. And obviously with Chandler Zavala out, I think Cade Mays might get a shot, which for the Dolphins is kind of a weak link you want to exploit just to see. Just to basically see if he's got what it takes. He's still a bit of an unknown. I mean, he was kind of slotted to start at right guard before injury in the preseason. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the route Carolina goes down. But yeah, this is all about high tempo offense for me, getting the football out quick, going no huddle, trying somehow to keep the Dolphins offense off the field for as long as possible. And I hope that somehow equates to them being in the game, but easier said than done, I guess.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into that now. Dolphins at Hard Rock Stadium this weekend. The Miami Dolphins hung up a 70 on the Broncos, and they looked quite good in most games, except for that the loss in Buffalo. But they've done really well overall. We saw Devon Achane going to IR this week, so they'll be without the rookie stud. But Jeff Wilson's coming back this week from IR, Raheem Mostert. So I don't think, honestly, with the Panthers' run defense this year, I don't think they'll be missing much there. Not to mention the receivers that they have with Waddle and Hill. So what are let's just keep it very simple. What are 3 things that the Panthers need to do to come out with a victory in South Beach? As much as people think this is already going to be a loss, and a lot of people are saying that and already assuming it, but they still have to line up. They still have to play for 60 minutes. What do they have to do to come out with the victory?
I would say control the clock would be the main one on offense. To a Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they can't do anything if they're on the sideline. So control the clock, establish the run. Like I say, go a little bit higher tempo. I know they simplified the play calls on the cue card on his wrist, which should help. I mean, I don't know if Hard Rock Stadium's kind of the most intimidating atmosphere he's going to find compared to kind of Lumen Field or the Link or somewhere like that. Sure. So that might work in his favor a little bit. So yeah, controlling the clock, establishing the run, stopping the run somehow, because they've been terrible at that. I mean, I'm really not impressed with the D-line, aside from Derek Brown. Shai Tuttle's not a nose tackle. He should be playing a 3-4 end. But they didn't replace Marco McCall effectively when they decided to let him go. So they've got a lot of square pegs in round holes at the minute.
That That is definitely a good way to describe that, and there was a lot of debate at the time with McCall's release. He's still not
Yeah.
on the team, failed the physical with the Patriots. So, not saying that was the wrong move or the right move, but at the same time, they didn't replace him at the end of the day.
Yeah,
To your point.
that's the most underrated issue on this team for me. If you're going to run the 3-4, then you need a dominant kind of anchor in the interior. And I didn't really have a problem with releasing McCall. I know he was kind of a fan favorite, but if they felt he had injury issues and he wasn't performing, they had every right to let him go. But at the end of the day, they did absolutely nothing to replace him, and they thought Shai Tuttle could fill that void, and it's been pretty clear through 5 games that's not the case.
That's not the case, no. Well, and then the other thing I would add is forcing Tua to hold the ball a little longer. Even if Brian Burns and Garrett Brown, who both did not practice today after being limited yesterday, so that's something to watch going into tomorrow.
Yeah.
Recording this on Thursday, the 12th of October. Even if they're 75-80%, that's still better than a lot of. I would think the offensive line playing with the backup left tackle right now, and their offensive line as a whole hasn't been that good. Hence why Tua is getting the ball out pretty fast. So if we can force them to hold the ball longer, I think that will be key, as you said as well. Let's get into some trades a little bit. October 31st is the trade deadline. We all know about Brian Burns, so let's take him out of the equation because some people think we'll get to that question in a little bit. But trade rumors regarding the Panthers, we've heard of them trying to get a wide receiver one. Jerry Jeudy's name has come up quite a few times among others. So 2-part question. One, should the Panthers be getting a wide receiver before the October 31st deadline? And number 2, if they do that or something else to that effect, what are some Panthers who could be traded as a result of that? Burns, we've heard Jimmy Chin, we've heard maybe Terrence Marshall Jr. getting a fresh start. Who are you keeping your eye
on? I think it all depends on the cost with Jeudy. Depends what they want. I mean, people are touting sort of a 3rd-round pick. But considering that's actually one of Carolina's picks and it's going to be quite high, more than likely, it's a difficult one. And then obviously coming into the last year of his deal, they picked up his option. So whether you'd work out an extension with him, depending on how he gets on in sort of the hypothetical scenario that he does arrive. I mean, he's got to learn the playbook. He's got to build himself up gradually, and then there's just no telling for sure if he's going to kind of hit the ground running, which is so it's a tricky one, especially kind of for an 0-5, maybe an 0-6 team to be kind of making these moves. It's not normally the done thing, but at the same time, given how things are right now, I mean, Bryce Young's development is the most important thing above all else. I mean, his growth, his development week to week so far has been pretty encouraging from my eyes. But he hasn't got enough help. So if you need Jerry Jeudy to come in, if it doesn't work out, then it's not like their 3rd and 4th round picks have been set in the world alight anyway under Scott Fitter, is it? So it's worth a gamble. They can afford his salary next year. I think it's just over 12 million. And if he turns out to be a wide receiver 1 next year, that's going to be pretty cheap. So I would go for that. In terms of outgoings, I mean, if you're Jeremy Chin, you're absolutely desperate to be getting out of here. I mean, 30% of snaps last week when they've got a banged up secondary and missing Shaq Thompson. I think he's played 55% in total this year. So if you were him, you'd be absolutely crying to be getting out of Charlotte, if you're honest with you. Get a fresh start somewhere else. And he's got athletic gifts that can be put to better use elsewhere, because we saw it as a rookie. So his decline's been really concerning, and it's clear that he's kind of gone from an integral part of the defense to being a specialist package 3rd down guy, which is kind of unacceptable with the talent at his disposal, really.
Yeah. And then specifically after the bye, regardless of what happens, we do have some injuries that we know are going to, obviously guys like Shaq Thompson, Brady Christian out for the year, but it does seem like we might get JC Horn back. We might get Xavier Woods. We might get Austin Corbett back after the bye. Frank Reich alluded to that potentially earlier in the week. Have to think getting those guys back, regardless of what happens in this game on Sunday, is going to be very big for this team, morale-wise, and just kind of getting healthy on the back end, as you said, to the defense. And then on the offensive line with Corbett, he really has been this missing piece that I think the offensive line has been sorely lacking. And I think has been a underappreciated player, I think, in Charlotte. And I think fans will notice that, especially when the run game, when he comes back.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't overstate kind of how important Austin Colbert's been in terms of leadership, his communication. I mean, just his presence there will make Taylor Moton and Bradley Bozeman better because they'll feel at ease about who's next to him. He's dependable. He didn't hardly put a foot wrong last year through the first kind of 10 weeks before giving up a couple of sacks later in the season. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. So I think out of the three, even though Horn kind of brings his own special traits when he's healthy, and God willing, he'll be avoiding any more complications for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Corbett is the most important of the lot, and especially kind of what I alluded to before about Bryce Young's development. I mean, for Bryce Young to go from kind of a carousel at right guard to having an established veteran, proven credentials, former second round pick, is going to be a huge step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah. And, Mike Kay over at the Charlotte Observer, he said this time and time going into the season is this roster has been very top heavy. There's not a lot of depth. And a lot of fans are concerned with the first round pick, that we gave up with Bryce Young and DJ Moore obviously leaving. But even though we don't have that first round pick, rosters aren't built based on just a first round pick. You've got to lay in depth. That's what this team needs is depth. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth rounds. Those guys that are the ones we need to have, and we need to hit on those picks in these upcoming drafts so we can start to have some of that depth in some of those positions that we've seen right now on this team this year, offensive line, corner, linebacker, just to name a few that we have been hit with injuries. And then the guys coming in, there's not a lot of depth there. And so that's something that's going to be really important as we get going into the offseason, but that's for another time.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's get into Frank Reich a little bit and this coaching staff. Thomas Brown, there's been a lot of buzz about him acting like a pure head coach when he gets to the microphone, knows how to talk about the podium. If he was to take over play calling duties, it seems like after week 7 in the bye would be the most ideal time to do it. And if not, then it would probably be next season at the absolute earliest. But so there's that piece. And then we've seen just this week, Frank Reich keeps going to the microphone and he keeps saying things that they're truthful, but it's almost like, okay, I didn't know if I need to know that. We talked about the timeouts, Terrence Marshall Jr. not playing. Does Frank have too much on his plate? Does he have too much, or like you said, too many cooks in the kitchen? And we can go back to Bryce simplifying the plays and making the play call shorter, the wristband stuff. So that 2-part question there. Does Reich have too much on his plate? And then thoughts on the overall coaching staff so far, and then the Thomas Brown, potentially calling plays after the bye.
Yeah, I kind of commend Frank Reich for being so truthful, but Panthers fans,
I do too, actually.
But kind of Panthers fans have gone from one extreme to the other, haven't they? They've gone from a guy who used to fumble his way through press conferences, making every excuse under the sun, throwing everyone under the bus, and then you've gone from that to a guy who's taking shrapnel for kind of everybody. And that's the way I'm kind of leaning at the moment. I mean, there's kind of failings within his coaching staff in terms of the rotations, like the running back rotation. Terrace Marshall, no involvement whatsoever last week. And the head coach is carrying the can, as he should, as the figurehead. But whether he's got too much on his plate, I don't know. God knows how much David Tepper shelled out for this coaching staff in the off season. And if they can't get it together with all their experience, and in terms of Thomas Brown and the younger ones, their progressive thinking, if they can't mesh that into cohesive game plan at this stage, I mean, they've got no hope, have they? I mean, they've had all summer, all kind of preseason. I mean, we were told they were hiding away some revolutionary offensive scheme from first 3 games in the preseason, and it's been kind of exactly the same until the last couple of weeks. So
yeah, but Frank Reich does have historically late starts. He was 1-5 in Indianapolis, I believe 2 years ago. I might have exactly the wrong year on that, but they ended up, that team that started 1-5 ended up making the playoffs at 10-6, winning a wild card game. But I do think a part of it is, like you said earlier, actually, taking all the schemes that Thomas Brown, Frank Reich, Josh McCown, Deuce Staley even, and bringing them together and making the best batch of groceries from the food that's been bought, and then making that into the best meal. And right now we've seen a couple of appetizers that are just kind of bland, but we're waiting for the main dish to be served. And the like you said, those creative play calls that we've seen throughout the offseason that we were hinted that were coming. Oh, it's just the preseason. Vanilla game plan. It's just the preseason. So we'll see as we go forward kind of how that plays out. But it's only 5 games. Now, I get it. Like you said, this season is about Bryce Young's development. We still have 11 games left after Sunday. So there is 11 more games. And, if we're still feeling this way in week 15, 16, let's talk about it again. But it's only 5 games, guys. And it's not like, and this is the other thing, and I think you'll agree with me, and I think you've written about this a little bit at catcrave.com, is where you can find Dean's work, is it's not like the coaching staff was just going to come in and select Bryce Young, plop him in, and then it's going to be all roses and cherries because, he is a rookie quarterback. He's going to take those hits. He's going to take those mistakes, the rise and fall with a rookie quarterback. It's going to take time. And I think people just don't understand that, even guys like Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman, we can go back, who had really rough rookie campaigns. Now they're both Hall of Famers. Bryce Young is going to be fine. I think once he gets a number 1 receiver, I really think he's going to take off, provided with the injuries, getting a little bit of luck there, and the offensive line is able to protect him. I think I saw this the other day. 2 recent guys that we talk about is Burrow and Tua, who had no number 1 receiver their rookie year. And then the next year 2, they get that number 1 receiver and then they take off. And so having that wideout core being strong is especially pivotal in the 2023 version of the NFL. So
it kind of goes back to that point though of the kind of delusional promises they were making before the season though. I mean, fans have been kind of starved of success here since the mid 2010s, since their kind of glory days. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And after the Matt Rule experience, it's kind of left everyone a bit deflated. And obviously, with all these big changes all happening at the same time, positivity rose as a result. Yeah. And then you had the GM making statements that his players couldn't live up to really, and I kind of think that's where most of the frustration is coming from at the moment.
So hitting on that really quick, I wasn't going to get to this, but you opened that door. Do you feel like Panther fans were did they have unrealistic expectations for this team, knowing that the offensive line overachieved a bit last year? The power running game was a little bit different than the zone blocking that we're seeing this year. And then the whole new coaching staff, a rookie quarterback, all of that? Or is it like you said that we were promised one thing by the general manager, but then the coaching staff is telling us differently? Which is it? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's probably a combination of both. I mean, you didn't have to look far on the depth chart to see. I mean, I was crying out all summer for them to do something at cornerback. I mean, given kind of the injury history within the room and kind of Dante Jackson and CJ Henderson's inconsistencies, to be relying on them. Although, in fairness to CJ, I think he's had a really good season so far.
He has done well, and he has. Growth Matos as well, I thought, has really stepped up.
I mean that he's given up a big play here or there, but you're always going to get that from him. But in terms of his growth from year to year, I mean, this has been his best year of his pro career by a considerable margin, I would say. But again, it's the promises. I mean, if they'd have just come out and said, look, this is going to take time. We've got these veterans helping Bryce Young. Yeah. He's going to make mistakes. We need Austin Corbett back to solidify the line. We're going to have problems. But instead, kind of they maybe got a bit ahead of themselves, and obviously they looked at the state of the NFC South and said, we're ready. We're ready to compete. And it couldn't be any further from the truth, really, from what you've seen over the last 5 games. And I don't really think they envisaged giving Chicago a top 5 pick either, which arguably ends their thought process about going up to make the trade in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't have time to get into a lot of that, but yes, there is a lot that fans might feel differently about on there. Brian Burns, we'll hit on that real quick, get some predictions and get you out of here. Again, Dean Jones from CatCrave.com, my guest today here on Inside the Vault. Brian Burns, his new contract, we know the negotiations have been paused as the season goes along. Fans think, some people think he's going to get traded. Some people think we're going to hold on to him because we can't afford to depart with such an elite chess piece on defense. So ultimately, what's your prediction? Is he going to get traded, number one? And if he doesn't, do the Panthers get a deal done this summer, or do they perhaps slap a franchise tag on him and say, okay, you want to give us 2 first-round picks for Burns? If we don't want to match your offer, go ahead. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't think they're going to trade him. I mean, the second round pick at the moment is basically a first round pick anyway, 33. So
yeah,
no team struggling is going to give up their number one for any player, never mind one out of contract that they're going to have to pay $30 million a year for.
Yeah.
So, and the Panthers need him. They've got no one real. I mean, he's still playing well. I know he's getting a lot of criticism for going missing in games, but he's getting double teamed a lot, and he's still kind of coming up with big moments. Winning his pass rush win rate is quite high for the double team.
Yeah, and no one said he was Nick Bosa. I think a lot of fans think he's like on this tier right below Bosa. I mean, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I don't want Panther fans getting into my mentions here. He's good, but he even said himself this offseason he didn't want to be paid like Bosa. He wanted to be paid in those top tier guys, below wherever Bosa came in. So
that's kind of how it works. People are saying, "Oh, he's not worth $30 million a year." Tough luck or an expletive. That's inflation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody's getting Max Crosby's money. If he wanted, if kind of the Panthers wanted Burns to get Crosby money, they should have paid him after they turned down that offer from the Los Angeles Rams, to be honest.
Yep.
But I think it's going to go the Lamar Jackson way. I think they're going to put the non-exclusive tag on him. Can't imagine a team making him a sort of offer the Panthers couldn't match, and then they'll go from there. But it must be incredibly frustrating for him as well. Considering he stayed around all offseason to work out and help his teammates and make sure that he wasn't being a distraction to the new coaching regime, and to be treated like this is kind of an indictment on the way things are going in the front office at the moment.
Yeah. Number 2, overall thoughts and expectations for the rest of the season. What can fans predict? What do you think from Bryce specifically as the team grows with him? You talked about earlier the development of Bryce Young is obviously the key to the rest of the season, regardless of the wins, losses. What do you think we're going to see from Young as he goes along the rest of the season? Obviously, we hope to see that steady growth, game by game. And maybe one week the handcuffs are finally off and he just kind of plays loose, plays free. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's that number 1 pick that, everyone, saw coming out of Alabama.
Yeah, I think you've seen flashes of that already. I mean, there's nothing that I've seen on tape that suggests that he wasn't the right pick. I mean, I was a big CJ Stroud guy. That's pretty common knowledge, but I was also of the opinion that you couldn't really go wrong with either. I mean, right. But
a lot of people had trouble with his height, and that is yet to
I mean, that's kind of an archaic way to look at the quarterback position these days. When you look at how, I mean, he's more slender than arguably anybody else, but you look at Kyler Murray, you look at Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, these guys who aren't 6'5", 240, they're not Cam Newton, and they're still having great success. So just growth. I mean, there needs to be a level of trust there that he's going to do the right thing as well, for him to kind of take that next step. I mean, they brought him in, they separated him from Stroud and Richardson because he was an elite processor. He could make good decisions. He was accurate at all 3 levels of the field, and he was able to sort of decipher precept defenses and things like that. So just let him take charge, kind of in a Peyton Manning way, but make sure he's got the right support system around him. But like you're saying, until the wide receiver unit improves, and I want to say the offensive line as well, but with Corbett coming back, I expect that to to really help. And that's basically all you can ask for him. He's going to make mistakes. I'd like to see them come down a little bit. I'm not going to lie, but at the end of the day, you're going to take the rough with the smooth. I mean, look at Trevor Lawrence now. Look at Joe Burrow now. Look at Tua. I mean, I was on a Miami podcast yesterday, and they were saying that they were ready to kind of kick him to the curb after, even before last season. Never mind what's going on this season. So, but patience is a virtue fans don't have, and especially fans of struggling teams like the Panthers.
Yeah, that's so true.
So it's just one of them. I mean, Young's got an old head on Young's shoulders, no pun intended. So he'll take it all in his stride, I'm sure, and be better for it.
Yeah. And I won't even get into what we've seen on Twitter lately with, Stroud's doing this in Houston, AR can't stay on the field in Indy. So, cautiously right now in Indianapolis, but, and that's a matchup we won't even see. Richardson will be out versus the Panthers there, as he was placed on IR earlier this week. So last one for you, Dean. Again, you've been so generous with your time, and thanks for giving us a little bit of time here on Inside the Vault.
Okay.
Talk about, let's just talk about just W's. When are we going to get a W? Is it going to be, most people don't think it's going to be this week, obviously, but then we have the bye, and then you got Houston, Indianapolis, and Chicago, 2 out of those 3 at home. So when is our first W of the season coming for the Panthers?
Oh, they better beat the Texans. They better beat the Texans. CJ Stroud coming to town, coming off a bye, so you've got all that time to prepare. They better beat the Texans. That's all I'll say.
I think the fan base might riot.
I'm going to say the Texans because they better beat them. I mean, Houston, they've got a solid foundation for a good future now. D'Amico Ryan's there. They've got a nice defense, some decent weapons in the passing game, and obviously CJ's been as advertised, if not exceeded expectations so far. Although I was pretty confident he was going to hit the ground running in any case, but I'm going to say Houston because they better win that game, because it's just not going to be a nice place 0-7 losing to the number 2 pick at home. And then you've got a good chance. And then you've got a good chance the week after, Indianapolis without Richardson, and then the week after that they go to Chicago, another winnable game. Although I did watch Chicago absolutely blow the doors off the Commanders on Thursday night.
Yeah, DJ Moore had his best game as a professional athlete. You would argue,
at Soldier Field as well. So I mean, I would temper expectations for that one based on what I saw from Chicago last Thursday. But I'm going to say Houston.
Okay,
I'd like to say they better win it.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, again, as I said at the top, my guest today has been Dean Jones with CatCrave.com. He is the editor there, writes for them on the website. Good work there. Go check him out there. Dean, excellent, great job. Thanks for your time. Anything else you want to plug since we got you here on the show before we let you go?
No, you pretty much covered it. Thanks for having me, though. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll let you go. See you next time.
Nice one, man. Take care.
All right. And that will wrap up this edition of the Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. I am your host, Ryan Smith. Again, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And we will see you next time.